Irene finished setting the table, smoothing the white napkins and straightening the lilies at the center. The clock edged toward 8. After 20 years of marriage, she still kept the quiet ritual of preparing a special dinner whenever Mark returned from a business trip, a fragile thread of connection in a life that sometimes felt like it was slipping away. At 45, Irene's beauty was calm and resilient. Her dark brown hair, streaked with silver, was pinned into a simple bun. She stepped back to admire the table, her efforts reflected in the polished silverware and candlelight. A small smile touched her lips. "Mom, do you really think Dad'll make it on time? You know how he is after those trips?" Her 19-year-old son Grant asked, breaking off a piece of bread. Irene turned to him, warmth softening her eyes. Grant, sensitive and thoughtful, with the same expressive eyes she'd fallen for in Mark, was the brightest part of her life. He promised he'd be home by 8. He sounded different this time. Happier, maybe. She tried to convince herself as much as him. Lately, Mark had grown distant. Arguments were frequent, intimacy rare. Irene chalked it up to stress or maybe a midlife reckoning. Before she could dwell further, the front door clicked. Mark entered, briefcase in one hand, a bouquet of deep red roses in the other. She hadn't received flowers in years. "I'm home," he said, voice warm, handing her the blooms. "For the woman who's been by my side for 20 years. A quick, perfunctory kiss brushed her lips. Dinner passed with Mark animatedly discussing contracts and business ventures. Then, with a gleam in his eye, he suggested a grand party for their 20th anniversary. 20 years deserve a real celebration, he said. Irene felt a fleeting hope, unaware of the coldness behind his smile, the way his gaze slipped past hers. That night, his touch in bed felt mechanical, obligatory. She drifted to sleep with a strange, nameless weight in her chest. In the weeks leading up to the party, Mark threw himself into the planning. Top caterers, a lavish hall, a new dress for Irene. "I want everyone to see how much I value my wife," he said each time she questioned the extravagance. Yet small details gnawed at her. Private phone calls, deleted messages, a faint trace of a new cologne. Grant noticed, too. "Don't you think it's weird? Dad never cared about anniversaries before," he said, scrolling through dress options. The night before, Irene found Mark in the study, whispering on the phone. "Yes, everything's ready. Tomorrow night." "She doesn't suspect a thing." He hung up hastily when he saw her. "It's a surprise," he said, forcing a smile. On the day of the celebration, Irene stood before the mirror, seeing a woman who had devoted half her life to her family, strong, composed, subtly marked by time. The navy dress hugged her figure just enough to remind her she was whole. Grant entered, whistling. "Wow, Mom. You look amazing." The banquet hall shimmered under golden lights. Laughter and clinking glasses filled the air. Irene felt proud, hopeful even, thinking this night might mark a new chapter. But wary glances and hushed whispers trailed behind her, unnoticed by most, seen clearly by Grant. "Ladies and gentlemen," Chris announced, tapping his glass, "we celebrate 20 years of marriage between Mark and Irene. But our host has something special prepared." Irene's heart leapt, expecting love, a tender toast. Instead, Mark adjusted his tie, took the microphone, and swept the crowd with a gaze that skipped her. 20 years is long enough to build a life, but also to recognize mistakes, he said. Tonight marks the end of a marriage that's lost its meaning. I'm starting a new chapter with someone who makes me feel alive. Whispers rippled. Irene's chest tightened. Grant gripped her arm. "Dad, what are you doing?" he demanded. Mark ignored him, gesturing to the entrance. A young blonde in a red dress glided in. "This is Allison," he announced, brushing her hand, a diamond ring catching the light. "The woman I've chosen to start over with." The words hit Irene like ice. She paled but stood tall. Grant moved forward. She placed a steady hand on his arm. "I know this is shocking," Mark continued, "but the heart has its own path. Irene and I shared good years, but now we go our separate ways. She'll be treated fairly." Nervous laughter hummed through the hall. Allison's triumphant smile said it all. "And we're engaged," Mark added. "Celebrations will come soon, and you're invited, well, most of you." His eyes lingered coldly on Irene. A heavy silence fell. Inside Irene, a spark ignited. She stepped forward, voice steady and resonant. 20 years is long enough to truly know someone, or so I thought. You're right, Mark. It's time to move on. But if you think this humiliates me, you're wrong. Turning to the guests, she continued, what you've witnessed isn't love, it's cowardice. Grant slipped his arm around her. Let's go, Mom. We don't need to stay here. Irene nodded, casting one last glance at Mark. I hope you find what you're searching for. As for me, I've gained the most valuable gift of all, my freedom. Head high, she left with Grant. Outside, free from prying eyes, her tears fell, not of defeat, but release. Grant hugged her. He'll regret this, Mom. Men like him always do. I don't need his regret, she whispered, drying her tears. I just want to live with dignity. Inside, Mark reveled in his new beginning while the party crumbled around him. Allison smiled, satisfied. That night, as betrayal lingered in her mind, Irene lay in bed, a seed of determination taking root. This won't destroy me, she whispered. It will make me new again. The days ahead were brutal. Gossip swirled. People whispered she was the woman he'd left Mark for. 20 years gone like that. Every word stung, but Irene refused to shrink. With Grant at her side, he'd even postponed college to support her. She started rebuilding her life. The divorce was far from simple. Mark's first settlement offer was insulting. He thinks he can buy me off with crumbs, she told Grant after a tense meeting. I won't accept less than I deserve. Irene hired a relentless attorney. Meanwhile, Mark flaunted his new life with Allison. Luxury dinners, lavish trips, and social media posts of staged happiness. Each display fueled Irene's determination, a quiet fire guiding her toward reclaiming her future. One sweltering afternoon, fate threw them together at a Houston mall. Mark's smug grin cut like a knife. You look well, Irene. Divorce suits you. Allison, radiant in designer clothes and dripping with jewelry, added venom. So nice to finally meet the ex, she said, each word a calculated jab. Irene forced a polite smile, holding herself with quiet dignity, and walked on, though their words lodged like shards of glass in her heart. Later, she stared into the mirror, confronting what Mark wanted her to see, a middle-aged woman, tired, worn, marked by faint lines. Am I really just old and worn out? Grant found her there, worry threading his voice. What are you doing, Mom? Fighting demons, she murmured. He wrapped his arms around her. I see a woman who raised me almost alone, who gave up her dreams for a man who never truly valued her. It's time you start thinking about yourself, Mom. The truth hit her like lightning. The next day, Irene went to a Houston salon, chopping her hair into a modern layered cut, adding caramel highlights, and treating her skin to a rejuvenating facial. She joined a gym, hired a personal trainer, and overhauled her diet, feeling tension ease with every session. I'm not doing this for Mark or anyone else, she told Grant one evening. I'm doing it for me. Her transformation didn't stop at appearances. Irene had once dreamed of a career in interior design. She enrolled in a refresher course, reconnected with mentors, and soon her first client, a longtime friend, entrusted her with a townhouse remodel. The project was a triumph, leading to more clients and glowing referrals. At a networking event, she bumped into Frank, Mark's longtime assistant. I almost didn't recognize you, Mrs. Vega, he said, eyes widening in genuine admiration. Does Mark know you're working as a designer now? He asked. She shrugged. Probably not. And honestly, I don't care. I'm following my own path. Months later, the divorce was finalized after a tense legal battle. Irene secured the house and a generous settlement. Grant waved the confirmation email triumphantly. It's done, Mom. You're officially free. That night, they popped a bottle of champagne, clinking glasses to a future no longer shadowed by Mark. Life surged forward. Her business flourished, confidence grew, and love returned. At a downtown Houston art exhibition, she met Jason, a 50-year-old widowed architect. Conversation flowed easily, laughter punctuated the evening, and when he invited her to dinner, she didn't hesitate. Their relationship unfolded naturally. Jason admired her intelligence, independence, and quiet fire. "You remind me it's never too late to start over," he said one evening. "Sometimes storms show you the value of calm," Irene replied, a genuine warmth spreading through her chest. Grant met Jason and gave his approval. "You look radiant, Mom. He seems like a good man." "He is," Irene agreed. "He sees me, not as someone defined by others, but as a whole person with my own dreams." Meanwhile, cracks formed in Mark and Allison's world. At gatherings, Mark's irritation at seeing Irene confident and elegant simmered beneath the surface. Behind closed doors, Allison's initial charm faded, revealing a shallow obsession with designer clothes, parties, and luxury trips. One morning, Allison complained about a lunch with partners. "You're getting boring, Mark. Didn't you leave your ex for a more exciting life?" Later, at the office, her reckless behavior humiliated him. Ignoring his careful instructions, she arrived in a revealing dress, flirted openly, and made careless remarks during critical discussions. Mark snapped. That night, returning home to retrieve important documents, Mark stumbled into a nightmare. Allison lay naked atop Frank, his trusted assistant. "What the hell?" he roared. Panic erupted. Frank scrambled. Allison called 911. Mark clutched his chest, pain exploding through him. 15 minutes later, paramedics arrived, stabilizing him for transport. "Is he going to survive?" Allison asked, panic in her voice. "We're doing everything we can," a medic said. "Severe heart attack. Every minute counts." At the hospital, Mark was rushed into surgery. Allison called Grant, who arrived with Irene. Seeing her calm, composed, and radiant in the waiting room, Allison's face burned with a mix of shame and envy. "What happened?" Grant asked sharply, eyes on her. Allison shot Frank a guilty glance. "He came home early and collapsed. The doctor said it was a major heart attack." Irene caught the lies instantly. The nervous glances, the disheveled clothes, the tense silence, but chose not to confront them yet. "Grant, I'll speak with the doctors," she said firmly. "I'm still listed as your father's emergency contact." Hours later, the surgeon emerged, relief and caution etched on his face. The surgery went well, but it was a very severe heart attack. "The next few days are critical. He's sedated, but one of you can see him briefly." "Go, son," Irene urged gently, resting a hand on Grant's shoulder. While Grant sat beside Mark, holding his father's hand, Irene's gaze drifted to Allison and Frank, who sat apart in the sterile corridor, avoiding each other's eyes. "What really happened tonight?" Irene asked, her voice calm but sharp, slicing through the tension. Allison paled but held her ground. "I told you. He came home and collapsed," she said tightly. Irene gave a small, almost sad smile. "I lived with that man for 20 years. I know what triggers him. A heart attack like this doesn't just appear out of nowhere." Frank sprang to his feet, straightening his tie with sudden urgency. I have to go. Business to take care of." He hurried down the hall without a backward glance. Allison watched him leave, a flicker of longing and resentment crossing her face. "I see," Irene murmured, almost to herself. "So what Mark saw tonight didn't just break his heart, did it?" Allison's jaw tightened, her gaze defiant. "I don't know what you're talking about." Irene didn't argue. Karma had already begun to work in quiet, relentless ways. When Grant returned, his eyes red from worry, he whispered, "He's so weak, Mom. I've never seen him like this." Irene pulled him close, pressing her cheek to his. "Your father is strong. He'll pull through." Inside, she reflected on the bitter irony. The man who had humiliated and discarded her now fought for his life, betrayed by the very woman he had chosen over her. She felt no satisfaction, only a quiet acknowledgement of life's impermanence and the subtle, inevitable justice that comes with it. Days stretched slowly. Mark remained stable but unconscious, while Grant divided his time between school, hospital visits, and supporting his mother, who continued to flourish in her new life. During one visit, Irene spotted Allison pacing the hallway, tense and worn, her designer heels clicking nervously on the tile. "The doctors say he could wake up any time," Allison admitted, voice trembling. "I'm just worried about what he might say when he does." Irene understood instantly. If Mark revealed the truth, Allison's carefully constructed facade and her financial safety net would collapse. What exactly happened that night? Irene pressed, calm but insistent. Allison hesitated, then confessed in a broken whisper. He found me in bed with Frank. He went crazy, started yelling, and then just clutched his chest and dropped. I thought he was going to die right there. Irene showed no surprise. Deep down, she had expected it. And now, she asked, "What do you plan to do?" Allison shrugged, her indifference chilling. "What can I do? Hope he doesn't remember, or decides not to tell. I can't lose everything now. Not after everything I've done to get here." Irene felt a shiver run through her. In that moment, clarity struck. Mark had discarded 20 years of real companionship for a hollow, fleeting illusion. Later that afternoon, as Irene and Grant sat in the quiet, softly lit hospital room, Mark finally stirred. His eyes fluttered open, weak and unfocused, first finding Grant's anxious face, then drifting to Irene. What happened?" he croaked, his voice barely audible. Grant held his father's hand tightly. "You had a heart attack and surgery, Dad. You scared us." Memories came rushing back. Mark's gaze met Irene's, filled with a vulnerability she had never seen in him before. Shame, regret, a rare and unsettling humility. He asked Grant to leave them alone. Alone at last, Mark's voice was barely a whisper. "She cheated on me with Frank. I caught them in our bed." Irene remained silent, watching the once proud, arrogant man shrink under the weight of his own guilt. "I understand now," Mark admitted, voice shaking. "The pain I caused you, the humiliation. I was a fool, Irene. I traded a diamond for cheap glass." Irene felt compassion, a trace of sadness, and a quiet satisfaction, but above all, a sense of release. "I'm not here for your confessions," she said steadily. "I came because Grant needed me. I don't wish you harm, and I hope you recover, but I've moved on." When she stood to leave, Mark reached for her arm. "Could we try again?" "I still love you," he asked, desperation lacing his tone. Irene gently pulled away. "No, Mark. What we had ended the night you chose to humiliate me. I am with someone now who truly values me." In the following weeks, Mark's health gradually improved, but pride and shame kept him from admitting the truth about Allison and Frank. When he was finally discharged, he discovered the bitter reality. Allison had emptied their accounts and vanished, while Frank had quit, leaving only a brief, insincere apology. The once glorious luxury condo, so carefully curated for appearances, now felt hollow and cold. Meanwhile, Irene thrived. Her interior design business flourished, her confidence blossomed, and her relationship with Jason deepened, grounded in mutual respect and affection. Grant, reassured by his mother's happiness, pursued his studies abroad, carrying her values with him. Before leaving for a semester abroad, Grant visited his father and found him alone, slouched in a worn armchair, empty bottles scattered around. "Dad, you can't live like this," he pleaded. "I lost everything, your mother, my dignity, all for a foolish obsession with youth," Mark confessed, voice raw. Grant urged him to seek help, and after a long, honest conversation, Mark reluctantly agreed to therapy. Concerned for her son's well-being, Irene surprised Grant by hiring a nurse, Carmen, to care for Mark. Not for him, but so Grant could focus on his future without worry. In time, Mark accepted Carmen's help. One afternoon at the park, he saw Irene walking hand in hand with Jason, her face radiant with genuine happiness. A pang of loss struck him, but beneath it, a strange peace. She had moved on, and perhaps it was finally time he did too. That night, Mark wrote her a letter, a simple, honest confession of regret and gratitude, wishing her happiness without demanding forgiveness. Irene read it quietly in her office, storing it away as a chapter of life that no longer belonged to him. Life unfolded steadily. Grant excelled abroad, Mark rebuilt himself slowly but sincerely, and Irene flourished, confident, loved, and fulfilled in her career. One afternoon, as she sorted through old photographs, she paused on one from her wedding with Mark. A smile touched her lips, soft and knowing. "Thank you," she whispered, not to Mark, but to herself, for surviving, for choosing dignity, and for becoming the woman she was always meant to be. Because in the end, It isn't what happens to us that defines our lives, it's how we respond. In that response, we discover our strength, our essence, and the power to rise from the ashes. You just heard this one from Stories by Sue. If it resonated, don't forget to like and subscribe. What are your thoughts? Share them in the comments, I'd love to hear. Thanks for watching.